Hi, good morning. Welcome to this online Sunday school class, coming to you from my home in Alcoa, Tennessee, where Julie and Sydney and I continue to self isolate. Now, I wanted to offer up a brief lesson for us this morning, and it's kind of a follow up to some of the things that Mark talked about last week. Mark he talked about the four Gospels and encouraged us to read through them briefly, to look for similarities and to think about what the particular author's intentions might have been behind their writings, who their audience was, and who they were writing to, and why. And he went through some of those things. And if you haven't watched that video, I would encourage you to do that. It should still be on our website. But in following up from that, I wanted to invite us to do something a little bit different with the four Gospels this morning. You may have noticed in your reading last week, or even in readings throughout your own growth as a Christian disciple, that there are really similar stories and verses within each of the Gospels. Some of them are exactly the same. Some of them are a little different, but similar. Um, so we're going to look at that this morning a little bit. So at this moment, I would encourage you to pause the video and to find a Bible as you've got handy in your house. I'm using a New Revised Standard Version translation. You may have a different version, which should be interesting for you as we read through these together. The first story that I want us to look at is from Mark 10, verse 13. Again, that's Mark 10, verse 13. I would invite you to take note of each of these stories as we go along and to look at them again after our time together. This story comes from, again, Mark 10, verse 13. Hear these words. People were bringing little children to him in order that he might touch them. And the disciples spoke sternly to them. But when Jesus saw this, he was indignant and said to them, "Let the little children come to me. Do not stop them. For it is to such, as these that the kingdom of God belongs. Truly I tell you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God as a little child will never enter it." And he took them up in his arms, laid his hands on them, and blessed them. Now, I want you to keep your thumb on that page. And as we look at a couple of different versions of this story, I want you to pay attention to where things are different and where things are similar. Let's turn to the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 19. Chapter 19, verse 13. Again, that's Matthew 19, verse 13. This version says, "Then little children were being brought to him, in order that he might lay his hands on them and pray. The disciples spoke sternly to those who brought them, but Jesus said, 'Let the little children come to me, and do not stop them, for it is to such as these that the kingdom of heaven belongs.' And he laid his hands on them and went on his way." Did you notice anything missing in this story compared to Mark's story? Did you notice anything that was exactly the same? Now let us turn to Luke. We're going to read from Luke 18, verse 15. Again, that's Luke 18, verse 15. It says, "People were bringing even infants to him." Now that's a big difference between the previous two versions and this version. People were bringing even infants to him that he might touch them. And when the disciples saw it, they sternly ordered them not to do it. But Jesus called for them and said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not stop them. For it is to such as these that the kingdom of God belongs. Truly I tell you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God as a little child will never enter it." You notice that in Mark's version and in Luke's version, there's a similarity at the end. "Truly I tell you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God as a little child will will never enter it. But Matthew leaves that version out. And it really changes, I think, some of the dynamics of this teaching. There are numerous examples of this throughout the Gospels. There are sets of teachings that are in and stories that are in all three of the Gospels. And there are some that are only in two, and there's a few versions that are only present in one of the Gospels. There are tons of theories about why this is the case. Mark talked about what a gospel is last week. Talked about how it is the good news, how it's the story of Jesus Christ, and how it is an invitation to follow. But it's also a synopsis of Jesus's life. And so we have a synoptic problem. A problem. Why are there so many similarities between at least three of the Gospels? John is incredibly unique and different. He follows the trajectory of some of the other Gospels, but he is totally unique in how much dialogue he has with Jesus in his Gospel, and his narratives are really long and complex, which makes it really unique, a really unique and interesting portrayal of Jesus. But within the synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, there are tons of similarities and tons of theories about why that is the case. One theory is that Mark was written first or earliest, maybe in the year 55 or 60 AD, and that Luke and Matthew, when they went about writing their Gospels, had Mark as a source to write from. And that Luke and Matthew actually had their own set of sayings of Jesus, something that was in front of them. Matthew and Luke, because there are moments in Matthew and Luke that are exactly the same, but those moments aren't present in Mark. So it's really interesting and kind of a fascinating thing. But that is the one of the synoptic theories about why things are so similar. I want to invite you, as we seek to grow in our faith, as we become potentially more isolated in the next couple of weeks, I want to invite you to read through the Gospels, or at least maybe one of them, and compare it to the other. Look for similarities and differences, and do sort of what we did this morning. If there are areas that are similar, read the same story from each of the Gospels. It can illuminate some different things for what Jesus was trying to teach. So anyway, I would invite you to do that and to find time to do that in this next week or two. And I hope that your Sunday is restful, that you can have some good time to study and to pray and to reflect and to enjoy the day. I hope you have a wonderful day, and God bless you.